Hey guys, welcome back to GitHub Spec Kit series. In our last episode, we did talked about the constitution file. Today, we are getting into the most critical part of the developer life cycle, the specification. Now, think about it. So many times, I'm sure you might have encountered this situation that you are middle of the coding and suddenly realize that hey, some specification is not clear. For example, you are defining a class file and then suddenly you realize there are some of the id data type, and you do not have 100% clarity that whether the data type should be an integer or GUID. The reason being that there is some issue with the specification is not clear. So that's whole idea about the GitHub Spec Kit, that first you define the requirement before even you write the first line of code. So now let's try to uh, understand how the specification phase works in GitHub Spec Kit. So we are going to define our requirement. Let's say that we are going to build a very simple product inventory API. So I'm just going to write a single sentence. Let's build product inventory API, just one liner. And now let's see that how the GitHub Spec Kit is coming up with the requirement. So at left hand side, just try to take a look and keep an eye. Suddenly you will see a new folder would be created, and you will notice that within that folder we will have a spec.md file. Now you see specs folder is created, and then within that specs folder you have 002 let's build product. So that is a kind of new feature branch. So any new specification when you define with the specify command, it is going to create that naming convention within that specs, and then you will have that spec.md file. So at this stage, this is what the GitHub Spec Kit has come up. Now think about it, that only one line we provided it, and then that is our input, right? Let's build product inventory API. And then what actually GitHub Spec Kit come, it define a couple of stories. So let's go through it. So user story one, add new product, obviously priority P1. That means that is our highest priority requirement, user story. And that's exactly what you would like to do if you are building a product inventory API. That is the first thing you will be creating in terms of the coding, that you want to have that capability where you can go ahead and you can create a new product. Now obviously, since creation of product is needed, you also need update capability as well, and at the same time you also need a API which is going to return that product information. And apart from that ABC feature, you also need the fourth, the requirement where you can list down all the products. And then see the edge cases, right? You can think about, these are the real scenario edge cases. If you're building a API like that, that what will happen if somebody is not entering the right, the data. And then based on those user story, if you see here, it is going to map some of the functional requirement. So those four story have mapped in these 7 functional requirements. If you see clearly, you have post, the methods, then put, then get, which covers all those scenario, right? Now there are the 2 functional requirement where it needs a little bit more details, and then you have the success criteria defined, and then some of the assumption. Now again, coming back to constitution, like we covered in last episode, the constitution is actually going to derive everywhere. So at the time of the spec.md creation, it did ensure that whatever the rules we defined it within that limit, it created that whole spec.md. So just one line story, and take a look at how detailed and how nicely covering, the all the business requirement, all the edge cases, everything has been defined here. Now there is one very important thing as part of the specify command. There is something called clarify. Now what clarify does, that you are telling actually to AI to ensure that if there is any ambiguity in the requirement, that has to be cleared out, right? Then only you will be able to come up with one foolproof plan. Because if there is something where requirement is not clear, what AI will do? AI will generate, the bogus and unnecessary code. So that is where the clarify command comes in the picture, that if there is anything which requirement is not clear, you should clarify it, and you should respond it. So what GitHub Spec Kit does, that it comes up with maximum 5, the optional questions, like if you see here ABCD, and then it asks you that, hey, this is what dispute I see, what should be the response, and then you respond it. And what actually it does, that it goes back to spec.md and it updates your requirement, that, hey, if you do not want authentication, it will go and it will update it. For example, and in this case, we selected no authentication needed. Obviously, if you are building API for enterprise company, right, obviously you need to have authentication, but just for a demo purpose, right, I'm keeping it simple. I'm selecting here no authentication, and then it suggested some of the fields as well, that what should be the ID and description and all that, right? Having said that, similarly, what actually GitHub Spec Kit does, that for any requirement, any specification, it goes and it reviews all your requirements, that it ensures that there is no ambiguity, and it clarify you. So max 5 questions it is going to ask. These 5 questions all are the configurable. If you want to increase that number or reduce number, that certainly you can do that. And in order to do that, you have to actually go and that GitHub and the actual the prompts which came with the setup, that you will have to update it. So now it is still going into the clarify mode, and unless all these the questions is not completed, it is not going to complete the final spec.md file. Now, when to use the clarify? If there are any doubts in terms of the requirement, you should use the clarify. It is a optional but not mandatory. So in other words, that let's say you already know that what is the requirements, so that you can give it right away, and then you can completely skip that the clarify command at all. So I think this is the 5th question, and now all clarification is done. Now think about it. That is the power of the specification command. We have gone from a vague idea, just one liner requirement, and then it is having everything. So yeah, so along with the MD, within the requirement file, it ensures that your specification quality is up to the mark, right? So that is what it does. In the next episode, we are going to take this spec.md and run the spec-kit.plan command to turn this blueprint into the step-by-step implementation roadmap. Thank you so much.